Hey guys, it's Graham. I've got a book for you. I finished one yesterday and I recorded my thoughts on it on the way home a couple of times after work, and I wasn't pleased with the result, so I didn't post a review yesterday. That book, I'm going to have to sit down and actually write out my thoughts on it. I'm sure I'll do a video on it eventually, but it was complex to analyze. Today's book, though, is a Christmas book. This one came out in 2011, and I'm pretty sure I bought the hardcover back then. It was one of those, it was a small hardcover with a short page count, one of those, not a Christmas noun type book, but it was one of those. It was put out by Deseret Book. That's back when I would still regularly buy books from them. Man alive, so much of what they put out in recent years is just bad. But I never actually finished this one because back then I was working at my brother's sticker shop, and December was just gauntlet month. I mean, we were working 16s for 2 or 3 weeks straight. My wife and I wouldn't even buy groceries because they would just buy lunch and dinner for us. We basically have to have breakfast at the apartment, and that was it. So I didn't have a whole lot of time for leisure reading, and then I'm weird about reading Christmas books after Christmas, so whatever. I never finished this one. It's called Jacob T. Marley by R. William Bennett, so a lot of initials going around here. This is in that subgenre of literary fiction where it's a tie-in with a classic, where somebody's trying to examine a side character or a less explored aspect of a public domain book and have a relevant and pertinent take on it. You know me, I wrote Sleepless Hollow. It is a 200-year sequel to The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I wasn't trying to riff on Washington Irving's tone. I wasn't really even trying to accomplish the same thing. I was trying to do my own thing that was still canonically connected to what he had done. This book is different. Bennett tries, and I think really succeeds, at trying to riff on Dickens' writing style. He's even quite verbose, but unlike Dickens, his wordiness doesn't overstay its welcome. That is largely because Dickens was paid by the word at the time, so there's that. But Bennett is not only trying to ape Dickens' prose here, but also the moral of the story, the point of the story. And in this case, it is both an origin and a different ending for the character of Jacob Marley, who was just as miserly and greedy and manipulative and bad as Ebenezer Scrooge, but he in the original Carol, he warns Scrooge. It's hey, see how I am, see how bad everything sucks. If you don't want to end up like me, you got to change your ways, and there are some ghosts that are going to come explain all of that. This book, with really good economy of word, shows us an origin for Jacob Marley, explains how he got to be the way that he was. It even explores the origin of his relationship with Ebenezer Scrooge, and then everything leading up to his death. And I think, now I'm trying to remember, if you've read A Christmas Carol, the original by Dickens, didn't Scrooge give him a pauper's burial, or a burial at sea? I wonder if that's one slight element that Bennett changed here because of the way that his story ended up going, ended up ending, because in this book, Marley has a grave in a cemetery, and that's relevant. I might be misremembering that, but I thought for sure, as a final screw you, let me save some money, Scrooge buried him at sea, just had his body dumped off of a ship, but whatever. This is one of those classical tie-ins that I think it hits the mark, obviously, like I said, on the prose, but also on honoring the tone of A Christmas Carol as Dickens wrote it, but with a different character that was really tragic in the Dickens original. And the way that he explored the ending. I'll spoil it here because I don't expect that you guys are going to go chase this one down. So, but in case you want to, spoiler, 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 spoiler. In this one, Marley ends up making a deal with an angel that comes to him and saying, like, hey, you've got a shot at warning your protege. This is what the angel says to Marley. You've got a shot at warning your protege against the ending that you've earned for yourself. And Marley ends up saying, like, okay, I'll take on absolute eternal damnation and the chains and everything if you let me make one final effort to save Scrooge, because he was what I made him. And by doing that, by selflessly sacrificing himself for someone else, and this is an absolute Christian theme, Marley's able to earn himself a happier eternity. I won't explain exactly how it all works, but he's able to redeem himself from the chains that he had forged around himself in life. I vaguely remember an interview that somebody was doing with Norm Macdonald. It was this guy who was... there were a couple of guys that were like arguing whether Harry Potter was better than the Bible, and it was kind of this cringy thing where like the Harry Potter super fans were like, this is great and kids should be forced to read this and the Bible should be banned, and it's like, okay, this is a really dumb idea. But Norm Macdonald pointed out, like, based on how the ending of the Deathly Hallows went, he goes, J.K. Rowling has said in interviews that if you understand the scriptures, you'll understand the way that the story ends. And it was effectively built on that same principle. Like, Harry was able to save all of his friends and put them under his protection by being willing to die for them, and not just saying it, but like offering himself up as a sacrifice. And that basically was how his mom protected him. That was old magic, quote unquote. And then he put all of the other students at Hogwarts under that same protection, and survived the Avada Kedavra spell or whatever by being willing to die for people that he cared about. It is at the core of Christianity. The crucifixion and the resurrection and the atonement of Jesus Christ was all because he loved everyone, and his sacrifice made it possible for everybody to gain eternal life. Like, distilling that principle down and applying it to Marley, he didn't know that he was going to get eternity out of that decision, but he was so willing to undo an evil mistake that he had done in corrupting Scrooge in life that he said, okay, well, let me pull the trigger on this because I feel like it's the right thing to do, and he does. So it wasn't, hokey or cheesy or unearned or anything. Like, when I got to the end of it, and the audiobook is out now, when I got to the end of it, I was like, okay, that was really well done. Like, somebody trying to riff on Dickens could really go wrong with that, but if you were to understand what he was really writing about and why, then you could do a really good job with it. And this author, R. William Bennett, who I don't think I've ever read anything else by him, the name doesn't really stand out to me, but he nailed it. He delivered, and that made it not just a really good Christmas read, but a good companion read to A Christmas Carol. Earlier this year, when I read Pride and Prejudice, I feel like there was some book that popped up that somebody had written recently, some lady author had written it in like the last 10 years, where it was the events of Pride and Prejudice, but it was from the perspective of the help in the house. This book took place when there was still a class system in England, and so you'd have people that were landed gentry and then people who were servant class, and like that was their lot in life until they got old and died. And so this lady who wrote this book wrote it as like she wrote a unique drama to the servants in the Longbourn estate. The Longbourn estate being where the Bennett family lived, Elizabeth Bennet and all of her sisters. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a subgenre of late sequels and tie-ins and stuff to classics, and I've read some of them that are pretty bad. There was another one that I read where somebody wanted to explore an alternate ending for Katrina Van Tassel in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, where like she was actually a witch or something. I couldn't finish it. It sucked. So this genre is often more miss than hit for me. But I remembered reading the first couple of pages, first couple of chapters maybe of this book, of the Jacob Marley book, back in 2011 after buying it, but I just didn't have the time to finish it because work got in the way. And here I am 13 years later, finally getting around to it. And I'm glad that I did. So a hearty recommendation. I'll give it 4 stars. I don't think it was quite worth 5. There were pieces of the writing that I'd probably just bore you if I went into excessive detail explaining as to why, and maybe you wouldn't even feel the same way about it that I did. But they just kind of slowed it down and took me out. But overall, this moved at a good clip, and the moral of the story at the end and the way that it ended was really beautiful. And that's an underappreciated quality, I think, in books. Is just that, like, oh, did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? Was it clever? Was it like, this was a beautiful book. I think it got that part right. So check out Jacob T. Marley by R. William Bennett. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.